Um, and I can say a attempted introduction. So thank you for those who I invited or for everyone for joining. Wait, am I good? Okay. And cool. So I'm mostly going to hand it over to Dhammarato and Robert to lead our discussion today. But you know, I think what I wrote in the email invite would be like the most I can summarize for this topic. So that'll be everything else will be left to our presenters to talk about this exciting idea and how, you know, our Seattle group can be like a proof of concept for it, but also how, you know, I know we have folks from all over the place. So cool. I'm going to lob it over to you, Dhammarato and Robert.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to start off by saying thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. I haven't seen any ladies come on yet, but they're also even more welcome than each of you. So thank you for taking the time. This is an idea that has been slowly hatching over a long period of time, partly between Robert and I, with feed-in from many different people. And so I would like to introduce, first off, Robert, because people know more about me. Robert lives in Thailand. He lives up in the north west of Thailand, but not all the way to the border. He has lived in Thailand. He speaks Thai very well. I know he speaks Thai very well because he speaks it both fluently and I can generally understand what he has to say. Where most Thai people, I don't have a chance. They speak so fast that I don't understand anything they say. But Robert is kind of clued in with that Thai language aspect that I don't have quite so well. And so he's been able to meet people and do things. He's lived in Thailand for years, I guess, and has a Thai wife, and has been in a lot of different Wats. And he's been down here doing retreats with Achan Po. He knows Achan Po. So he's got a really close, deep connection with the Dhamma. Has been doing translations of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And also, he's the one that I go to. He's my go-to guy when I want to check what the Thai language version of the Pali Canon has to say. Because I generally don't trust, as you probably know, I don't trust very well the English language translation. And so, Robert and I have been having the idea of actively doing something to unify the Sangha. First off, in our instance, to begin to bring the Dhamma together and all the kind of Dhamma do's, especially those that are in pragmatic Dhamma. Basically, what I'm looking for only has two general qualifications, and that is that people are not actually actively looking for money by selling the Dhamma. And number two is that we generally don't speak magic, that we take the magic out of it. And so pragmatic Dhamma, I think, fits in both of those categories extremely well. And so it's a very, very good fit. But if we can expand that to all of the budding Dhamma teachers that are beginning to, let us say, get on fire, come online, or a way of saying it, they become eager enough in their lifestyle so that they just start living the Dhamma and they want to start teaching the Dhamma, and they've got basically nothing else left to do in their lives other than Dhamma. And that's what the Dhamma does to people. It's a common thing. That's why the Sangha was set up in the first place. And that's why there's, what, somewhere between 2 and 5 million people who are ordained in the Buddhist traditions now. That's a lot, you know. There's no army in the world that has 5 million. And so it's a common kind of thing. And that there are far more lay people that are also dedicated to the Dhamma. But we don't have any unity the way that they do in Thailand. Through the Thai Wats, they're very much interconnected. The monks know each other. They know each other at various levels, but it's a great big old boys club in a way of thinking about it, where everything is based upon friendship and camaraderie and getting along. And most of the Westerners that I know that are getting into meditation, they feel kind of isolated. And so this is a way of us gaining a community, especially with this Zoom. I think that, you know, I'd be honest with you, I'm impressed. To see so many faces all at once and being able to talk like this is almost like having a live audience. And so thank you all again for coming online and listening to this. So the Seattle project is interrelated with this in the following way, that the Wats in the United States are generally very much interconnected. The abbot of the Wat in Washington, D.C. is a good friend of the abbot in Seattle. And on it goes. When I was a monk in the United States, I was in at least in 50 different Wats. That the monks do travel around a lot, not just in the States, but also in Thai culture. That it's literally a moving target. That the only time that the monks will settle down is the 3-month period of the Panza, the rains retreat, and they'll stay in one place then. And other than that, the only thing that's going to keep a monk in any particular Wat is that he's the abbot or that he's got students. But other than that, the monks are free to travel and go. And I saw a lot of that in the United States, which means that already the Thai people and the Lao together, in fact, Thai language and Lao language is so close that the Laos understand the Thai, but the Thai don't understand the Lao. How that works, I'm not sure. But it has to do with Northeast Thailand and the Eastern language that's halfway between Thai and Lao. So they get along very well together, as well as there's a lot of monks that are on the border of Cambodia that will speak both Thai and Cambodian. And so those Thai monks will get into the Cambodian Wats in the United States generally, because it's very difficult for Cambodia to get monks out of Cambodia into the US. But there's also Wats in England and in Europe, and they all are interconnected with each other. The ones that are disjointed is us. And so what I'm looking for is for us to start to become more connected together, both on the medium of Skype and also to come together by going into and becoming part of the already existing Buddhist culture that exists in these various Asian temples. And we already have connections with the Asians. That this is where Robert comes in, that he knows Achan Jiao Kun now Tanet in Washington, and he also, now we know Jiao Kun Ri. I think I'll listen to how Robert says it later. And we've actually done a Zoom call with Jiao Kun in Seattle. And so he's quite eager for Spuds to move right in. And so with that, we thought we would have this call so that we can talk how Westerners can move into a Thai Wat, both once in a while, on a regular basis, or actually move in. Because in Thailand, lay people live in the temple on a regular basis. Basically, all you have to do is to fit in, and they would like that. This is a common culture that's available. So Robert has already started putting together the other side of it. And so what we're doing today is to talk to you guys about what life is like in the US and in Europe, so that you'll know how to get in, how to fit in, and whatnot. So at this, I'd like to introduce Robert and give him some time. Thank you,
All right.
Robert.
Is my mic on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not so great with Zoom. Dhammarato and I are learning how to use it together, I suppose. So like you said, my name is Robert. On here it's Nunrin. That's because I took Jukai in a Zen tradition as well, so I sometimes use that name. Like you said, I've been in Thailand for quite some time. I came here back in, it was about 9 years ago. I've been back to the States a bit. That's where I'm originally from. I spent some time working in the States as well as staying at Thai Wats, so that's my connection. I've never ordained. I once was preparing, but then I got rather sick and it just didn't work out. But I spent a lot of time in different Wats in Thailand and in the States as a layman, so I have a bit of that connection with that culture. And like you said, it's very, very easy if you're familiar with the culture and the customs of a Thai Wat, or really in any of the Southeast Asian Wats. It's very easy to sort of just become a part of that community as someone who visits regularly or someone who stays there full time, or at least for periods of time on retreat. Very, very easy thing to do. But there's a bit of a cultural divide. So one thing that I always loved when I was visiting Wat Thai DC, it's not actually in DC, it's in Maryland, but close to DC, so they call it DC, is that it's almost like you're going to visiting that country. So when you go into the Thai Wat, you're more or less entering Thailand. Sure, it's governed by the laws of America or England or whatever, but it's very much governed by the cultural laws of the culture that sort of built up the communities. And so that sort of puts a bit of a barrier between these and then the general surrounding community. They serve as a cultural center, so you'll have both the religious functions, so holidays or funerals and ceremonies and chanting and ordination and so forth, but there's also as a whole cultural side of it where it's about these festivals and having the food. A lot of these Thai Wats and other Wats will have school, summer school or weekend school for Thai kids to learn Thai language and reading. Sometimes they'll even have other cultural things. Like I've been and I've learned Thai instruments, traditional dancing, all sorts of other cultural things. They all get put into these temples, which can be a fun experience, but can also be really off-putting and really emphasize the divide between the Asian community that's built these and then the surrounding Western community. On the flip side, the monks there generally have gone through training here in Thailand before going to the West in order to be able to discuss the Dhamma and to sort of teach it to people who aren't ingrained in these cultures. But they're handicapped a little bit by the fact that they have been only, even when they're in America or wherever else, they really only are exposed to Thai culture or Lao culture or Cambodian culture and so forth. They don't get a lot of exposure to the surrounding culture because they're basically full-time living in cultural centers. Oftentimes
they will something at this point.
English. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Robert just pointed to, but he didn't make specific that some of the best monks in Thailand wind up outside of Thailand. And the reason for that is because when the lay people that are looking for new monks, as their community grows, they can expand, and generally the more monks, the better, is the mentality in the Western communities. And as I said, the Cambodians actually come to Thailand looking for monks, and the Lao community does also. So there's going to be some Thai monks in the Lao communities as well. So that's the way that things got really mixed together. But the important point is that the Lao and the Thai and the Cambodian lay people really know what they're looking for. They have been Buddhists their whole life, and they know what a good monk is, and that's what they go looking for, and then they invite those. So you will find some of the best, most high quality monks in the world right there at your doorstep. And that's kind of amazing. And that many of them are of the Bhikkhu Buddhadasa tradition, and or are of the noble Dhamma. That was one thing that it became interesting to me, was in the Lao community. They had no knowledge of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa as a name, but they still knew the noble Dhamma, and they understood it. In fact, that's part of the reason I fed in so well with that Lao community, is because they were full of nobles. That you don't find your average low-class magical monk being invited to come stay in Thailand. However, the monks do have to cater to the Thai people who are magical thinking. And it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that it might take a while for you to get close enough to a monk to go into the noble Dhamma, because he is normally at the level of the magical thinking Dhamma that most of the community will have. However, that's also changing. And the reason for it is because mostly the higher, more intellectual people of that whichever society are the ones who gravitate towards the noble Dhamma. It's only your very low-class people who keep it very magical. And that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa had a major influence on the upper, let us say, the intellectual classes of Thailand. And so the Thai community generally tends to be noble, but it tends to present itself as magical. So I'll give back to Robert now. I just thought I'd throw that in there for you.
Yeah, so there's definitely that aspect of things which is a little bit strange, where a lot of what things are being presented as tends to go towards the more of a magical perspective, even if the individual monks don't actually tend to look at things that way. There is quite a bit of catering to the community in that way. I think that's part of what can make these off-putting, is because on the one hand, for over 100 years, Buddhism has been presented to the West as sort of rational tradition that can be fit in with science and so forth. But yet, if you go into your average temple here, that's not what you're going to see or feel like in the slightest. And although in the States, these temples have higher quality monks than your average temple here by far, a lot of times you won't feel like you're seeing that. It's not initially obvious. But I think Dhammarato and I can both confirm with our experience still with who knows how many dozen or probably hundreds of monks. He's met a lot more than I have. That is actually the case. Like I said, there is a bit of a vetting process that happens both with the lay people and the monastic community in abroad when they're picking the monks, whether it's the Thai government, sort of because they have to arrange for visas and stuff. There's a bit of a vetting process there. There's a bit of vetting process in terms of the communities where these monks are being sent that they don't want to have. They don't want to support just any old monk. They want to have someone who's a bit better than usual. Also one that'll cater to them a little bit more than usual.
Bragging rights.
So, yeah. But I think there's a really great opportunity. I really love my time with spending time with temples in the States. And to a certain extent, I enjoyed it more there than I do here because of that general sense of the monks are picked well. I would disagree or perhaps add a little bit of nuance to what Dhammarato is saying in terms of class. I would actually argue that a lot of these really good monks are coming from rather low class Thai society, even although they're very high class, high caliber kind of people. If you wander around temples here, you'll find that a lot of these really good monks are really serious on meditating. They'll be covered with all sorts of tattoos and stuff from when they were a rebellious teenager, or all sorts of magical stuff. And they don't believe that anymore, but that's where they came in. In fact, I have a good friend at a temple about 15, 20 kilometers that way. And he specifically targets young men like that. Ones who aren't doing well in society, he kind of says, we're going to grab them, we're going to put them in the robes and make them into great monks. And he does a pretty good job of it. Same thing with the lay people. I wouldn't say that it's just that all the the more educated, affluent Thais are the non-superstitious ones. In fact, I know a lot of affluent Thais who are extraordinarily superstitious, as surpass any of the farmers in my village here. So it's not so clear cut, but there is a trend. There is certainly a trend that gives rise to the stereotype.
Robert, you're breaking up for me. Is that
Okay.
true for other people? Can you hear him okay?
I can hear the words. It's
coming.
not great audio quality, but I can understand the language. I think that's what's important.
Yep.
Okay, never
Okay.
mind. Is my
So maybe
ears broken?
Well, I'm on a mobile connection, so I will turn off my video maybe, and that'll help the audio quality. That's something
That
Dhammarato
does,
and I usually do when
definitely.
talking.
Right.
That should help the quality considerably. Anyways, so there is this. So one of the things that Dhammarato and I have talked about, because we've both had a lot of time spent in these temples, both in America and in Thailand, that we can see that there's a bit of this cultural divide. But there also is a really good opportunity, because that's how he and I have spent a lot of our time learning the Dhamma, is that there's a really great opportunity to learn in these systems, but they aren't really set up for the Westerners, not deliberately trying to exclude, but just because of some of the cultural factors, it creates this divide, as well as the geographic factor. For one of you to fly over here is going to take a lot of time and money. So
that's an important point. They are intentionally Asian. They are intentionally trying to make the Wat as Thailand as possible, or as Cambodian as possible. And so one example of that is that the little old ladies will scrounge really hard to get very authentic groceries that they can put in their most authentic food. Never mind what it tastes like. That's not important. It's got to be authentic. And another one, and I think Robert was the one who was saying like this, I think it's a restaurant in London, and that the food that they serve at the restaurant is not the same food that they take to the Wat. The food they take to the Wat is much more authentic cuisine. Everyone there goes to speak Thai language. Even in Wat Thai, Washington, D.C., for years, they've had a Thai class for the Thai kids to learn Thai. They do not want to have the kids not know the Thai language. And everything about the Thai Wat is Thai intentionally. So don't let that become a barrier to you, okay? Because you're still absolutely welcome. So now I'm going to throw it back to Robert. Go ahead.
So talking about, for instance, Wat Thai DC, you were talking about Thai language classes. It's not just that though, because I participated in some classes there where we were learning various Dhamma stuff, and they were all in Thai. There weren't any English offerings until shortly before I was coming back here, when I got roped into helping teach an English class because the previous one was sort of petered out. But one of the nice things and one of the exciting things about the Seattle is that they have a really strong offering in English that seems very established. So there's a big opportunity there, and really anywhere else, that if we have people who want to use these facilities, whether it's having the resource of having the monks there to talk to learn more about the Dhamma and the culture, that it's been the vehicle for it. That's all there. And then there's this facility that is perfect if you want to, do practice, that you've got everything set up. You'll have people that'll come. I remember the first time that I stayed and I took the 8 precepts at a temple. I was just crazy to me because they set me up. I had my own table. They all brought me all sorts of food and everything. And there was no formal routine. It was literally just me. And then because they already have the system going with the monks, that if you have people that are wanting to practice, it's just one more, set up another plate on the table, open up, if there's an extra monk's room open or somewhere in the library. Spent a lot of time sleeping in the library. Or anywhere else. I think I've slept in just about every corner of all the temples I've been to. Anywhere, as long as you're okay with not, maybe having a proper bed. It's a perfect spot just to have an impromptu retreat without really having to do any external setup. So you have this aspect of having friendship with the monks and some of the lay people. You have all the teachings. A lot of times they'll have books. For instance, Wat Dhammarato, they have a whole Dhamma books thing stocked full of English books. Almost all of the English Bhikkhu Buddhadasa offerings that are printed are there, along with a bunch of other prominent Thai monks. And it's all there. It's already all set up. It's just that it's not, because the monks are running in these Asian circles, that there's not much that gets outside of that. And, as well, all these monks, well, for instance, I've never even been to Seattle, but it took me about 5 minutes to get the personal contact info for Ajahn or any of the other monks, because I know a bunch of monks in the States and they all know each other. So it's only a few minutes for me to talk to the ones that I know, and he'll say, oh, I know him. In fact, he says, I'm a really good friend. And so he gave me a personal introduction. Next thing you know, I'm on the phone talking to him. So there's this whole little subculture that's already exists that if we can just penetrate in, there's a lot of opportunity there to use the facilities and to use the people. But there is this issue of culture. So it's one, understanding that, and then understanding a little bit of the traditional etiquette in these places. And then once you understand just a few pointers on that, you're basically in. Obviously, you'll be left out of any non-English things, but there presents an opportunity for Westerners in some of the places that don't have much of an English opportunity to start help putting together groups and classes. Where
that's the other side of the coin, is to go to work.
Someone do it. And a lot of the English offerings in these Asian Wats are done by lay people in these communities. So any one of you could very well be the next person who's putting it together, because these monks would love to have something like this happen, but because of some of their commitments in the community, as well as the fact that they might not feel very comfortable with the English language, or they just don't have the outside connections to get the people to come, even if they do have the language skills, that these groups don't get set up. But almost every one of these temples would love to have a Wednesday night sitting group, or a Tuesday or a Friday or a Saturday or whatever, whenever it is. I would be shocked if you found a place that wasn't open to that idea assuming that you've done just a few simple things to sort of win them over and say, okay, yeah, we like this guy.
One thing that I can mention on that about the Thai monks, that there's kind of a game that they play, and that game could be known as who can drop the most names. And basically what they're looking for is, I name all the monks that I know and you name all the monks you know, and so that we can begin to build the network of who do you know that I also know. Is that not right, Robert? Haven't you seen that? That's the kind of a game.
Look at our conversation at Dalit last week. It was very early on. It was both of us going and him going, do you know so-and-so? Oh yeah, I know him. Oh, do you know this person? Do you know that person? And very quickly you have that. And so Dhammarato and I, since we have some of those connections, can very easily sort of create invites for people to say, oh, I know this guy. He's, just give a really short introduction and they say, okay. And then you have a bit of an in there. You could also go walk in, but you'd have to really mind your manners an extra bit more to sort of win over some trust.
Right. So what we're inviting you to do is to drop all the names you know. You can mention Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, you can mention Robert, you can mention me, you can mention Ajahn Panyananda if you know him, or Ajahn Chah, because they all know these names. And so
even if it's not a living personal monk that you know, just saying that you know these big name teachers is a benefit, just because they say, okay, because they've got to sort of judge where you're at and what it is that you do. And so I find that if you don't incorporate some of that knowledge early on in your first conversation, then they're going to have to make assumptions for how much you might know or where you might be at. And unfortunately, their assumptions are going to be based on Thai culture. And so if they don't see you as being sort of in the culture of practicing the Dhamma, then you're going to be left in the, on the side of, okay, you're here to make merit and do ceremonies and magical things maybe, or you don't know anything about Buddhism at all, and they're going to be giving you 101 when that's not what you were after.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you can establish a bit of a reference point for them, then you can get an offering that's sort of suited to wherever you're at.
Here's another
maybe
go ahead.
Yeah, so just to take one quick comment here. So I think just to orient ourselves, what we're talking about on the call here is multiple opportunities. So to make multiple opportunities, and B, that Seattle, this is a place where some of those opportunities can begin to manifest for anyone who wants to give it a try, basically. And one of those opportunities would be to learn from monks who have a lot of experience with practice, and just to basically go there and receive instruction and talk and, just form those relationships. Another one is to do retreats there, including, and in a way that's not exactly like the kind of retreats that most of us are familiar with, because it's coming from a different angle and from a more from a tradition that's much more rooted in the Dharma for much longer. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And then specifically, I think we're going to go into probably etiquette, like how to actually how to get some of those things going, because there's a certain etiquette component to it. And then I think probably some of us have questions as well at a point where we can go to that. And I know Jim's putting some questions, but there was also, and we don't have to go in order, but we should definitely cover etiquette and then questions. And one of them was a concern about like basically cultural sensitivity, and like basically, to come in to this cultural center and, try to, basically get at the core practice, so to speak, without necessarily fully honoring some of the other cultural traditions and events that are taking place there could seem to be problematic in different ways. So I think that partially will be covered by the etiquette piece, but I also wanted to hear you guys speak about that.
Okay, let us start off with walking in the door. The first thing you do is take both your shoes and your socks off and plan on going barefoot. The next thing to do is to not go looking for anyone or to make a big scene or to ask questions or anything, but basically don't do much of anything. In fact, if you can find or that the door opens into the, let us say, the shrine room, the throne room, or the Dhamma hall, or the meeting room, or the meditation hall, whatever you want to call it, then just sit down. Sit down and sit for a while. This will, in fact, send them a message that you could not send them with your mouth. To just come in and sit down, and you'll get noticed. Now, I can't tell you what time of day, but I do know that most of the Wats will have lunch at around 11. So showing up at 10:30 in the morning would be a really excellent time for this, because you might, in fact, be invited to lunch right away after sitting for 30 minutes or so. So this is kind of the way that things are, is that there's a lot of nonverbal cues that you can give. And so quiet and sitting and not asking questions and all of that will look really good. And so when you introduce yourself, you can say, that you've heard about us and that we're hoping that this was a good time for you to come, and this kind of protocol will go a long way. So doing the name dropping and that kind of thing that we just mentioned is good when you get into conversation. And it would be okay if 3 or 4 or 5 of you went all at the same time. That would be great. So maybe Saturday morning at 10:30, you show up at the Wat and just take it from there. Somebody's asking a question. Can we get some monks? Yes, maybe we can. I mean, Achan Jalkun Reed just sent me an invitation for a Zoom call on the 20th. So I suppose that we can.
Awesome. And just to take some more questions. So CJ had a question. Oh, yep.
One
Go
second.
ahead, Robert.
So before we open up for questions, I have some notes on etiquette
Protocol.
that I think would be helpful.
Yes,
and I
go.
can send these out via the email. I'll send these to you, Noah, and then so you have the list of people, you can send them out. But here are just some basic points of etiquette. I compiled these just from what I thought, and then talking to a few people and looking at a few different things and what people were saying online in the Thai community. Or here's your general etiquette. So my first point is, perhaps even before you make it in the door, would be dress. Typically, there'll be a little bit tending towards conservative, but not formal dress at a temple. So this is going to be, having
shoulders and knees covered.
Yeah, your typical modesty, having loose, just don't attract attention is really the rule here. Don't, whatever it is, whether it's by showing a lot of skin or whether it's by loud colors or lots of statements. The idea is to sort of just keep a muted appearance. But
a muted lower, a muted lower skirt or pants and a white shirt would be good.
Yeah, that's kind of the gold standard here, is a dark colored pants or skirt and a white shirt, or even a white pants or skirt if you really want to go full thing. That's a Thai custom for when people are going to temples. Sometimes they'll do that. But for the most part, it's just a little bit conservative, not attracting attention, comfortable. All black is the typical for funerals. All white is typical for people who are coming to specifically to make merit or for dedicated periods of practice. A lot of times temples here, if you're going to go on a retreat, they will have you do all white. Most of the time they won't, but sometimes they will. So if you want to get some bonus points and for some cultural knowledge, pop on a white t-shirt and a pair of darkish color pants, or even light color pants. The pants don't really matter too much. But that'll win you points. Behavior, general, just being courteous, considerate, following signs, taking cues, see what other people are doing and don't do something that's the opposite. Always take off your shoes. There's always going to be a place to put shoes. That's just a big one in Thai culture. Your physical composure. There's this idea that being physically collected and composed is a sign of sort of good manners as well as good training in the Dhamma. That's one of the big things for monks, is how they physically hold themselves. So whether this is, when you're sitting on chairs or cross-legged on the floor or kneeling sideways, not just really sprawl out. Mind where you point your feet. This is another big thing in Thai culture, is the feet are kind of considered the dirty part of your body, and it's very rude to point them at other people, especially if they're people that you should be respecting. Or monks or Buddhist statues get this treatment as well. So, don't point your feet at people, or even your typical pointing your index finger at people and things is considered a little bit.
That's right. Don't point at things. That's kind of rude.
Just do an open-handed gesture is the polite thing in Thailand.
Right, okay. Right.
Another big thing is mindfulness of just how much noise you're making, whether it's walking loudly or laughing really loudly or having your cell phone go off. Just again, it's the more polite and physically composed you seem, the more points you will kind of win for some of these. That being said, you're going to these, there are going to be a bunch of kids running and screaming. You're going to have like old grandmas who don't even know how to turn off their cell phones, so they go off like constantly during Thai funerals. So don't feel like you've made some great offense. These are just ways to sort of improve your image to the Thai people and the monks.
A small point, don't throw anything to a Thai person. They will not catch it, and it is rude.
Yes, it's very rude. Americans throw stuff all the time. Thai people never throw things to each other. Like never, ever, ever. Like the only thing you'd throw to someone is like if you're doing. They do not have
baseball here. It comes from a baseball mentality, and they do not play baseball. So even then, something is a weapon.
Yeah, even the sports here, there are not really many throwing sports. It's usually kicking and stuff like that, whether it's football or taka or something. So yeah, no throwing things at any point. No one will like that. Maybe like the more Americanized kids, they will find that fun, but no one else would. They probably won't catch it, and then you'll just look bad. It's another odd thing. Another thing to know is the why. This is the typical Thai gesture where you're putting your palms together. The higher up you do it, kind of bonus respect. You will only do this to people who are either monks or older than you. Age matters a lot in Thai culture. So if it's like younger people, then there's no need for like kids and teenagers or anyone who's younger than you if you're older than a kid or teenager. But that'll look weird, but not that weird. It'll just
just like this for the kids, but like this for the grandmas and like this for the monks.
And so do that. The monks won't do it back. That's just an old monk custom here.
That's an old monk's custom. The monks in Thailand do not why back.
Yeah. So, but everyone else will. That's just the rule. So it's quite straightforward to do. Speaking of monks and why, they won't why back. A lot of them won't. A lot of the Thai monks, specifically, I don't know why Thai monks have this idea, but they don't do handshaking for the most part. A few might. If they initiate it, then shake their hand for all you're worth. But not hard, because they usually are very dead fish kind of handshakers, and they are. But handshaking is generally not a thing. Monks generally avoid physical contact. This is because there's a lot of these Vinaya rules trying to preserve monks' ability to be celibate. And so generally just don't touch monks. They will have their Vinaya rules and stuff. One thing that's really weird, at least was for me initially, because I saw lots of monks and they don't seem to follow any rules. And then if you read the rules, you'll discover you still don't see how they're following a lot of them. And the fact is that there's plenty of rules that they aren't following. That's just something to be aware of. I think Westerners have been conditioned by this Ajahn Chah, really strict textual interpretation of the rules informing how the monks behave. But for the most part, they're going to behave according to tradition, how the community expects them to behave and how their teacher taught them to behave. And it's not going to necessarily follow any textual rules. So that's something just to be aware of, is that although they'll all say the texts are important, that's
Robert,
actually
I'm
not.
surprised you know that. I'm
How will
really
you not know
impressed.
that? It's so obvious.
Okay, all right.
But just because a lot of people are going to have been exposed to like Ajahn Chah and some of these, the people who write this are the people who really think about all the nitty-gritty details. And in fact, a lot of Westerners don't make it in the robes because they get obsessed about this and it just gets on their mind and it becomes a major hindrance. And then they end up disrobing because it just becomes an obsession. But another couple things that are almost always going to be observed is there's going to be no food before noon. There may be a few sort of allowable borderline cases. Maybe it might be a little bit of cheese or some sunflower seeds or tea or whatever
You
it
say
may be.
before or after?
Afternoon. So no,
Okay.
so sorry. Food is always going to be before noon for monks, and then they might have some allowable, usually just drinks, but maybe a few little snackish like items and some customs.
That,
Money
by the
is
way,
another
is more
thing.
cultural than it is Vinaya.
Oh, all of it's cultural. It's not Vinaya. It's tradition.
No, it's the Vinaya is Wakalabojana, which means eating at the wrong time. And we're talking about not eating, but gathering food. And the wrong time gathering food at the inappropriate places, like going to a state fair, because that's actually part of what's in the sutta to describe this. But somehow or another, this cultural thing about 12 noon has gotten stuck, and it's just really not part of the actual Vinaya practice. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I think you're the only one who I've ever heard argue that angle. Everyone else is
All right.
firmly convinced that is a Vinaya, and I've not bothered to read enough Vinaya to tell one way or the other. But regardless of what the actual Vinaya may have originally been or what the original intent was, that's the uniform observance in all of the Theravada temples. But another couple points with monks is that a lot of times, especially in the main hall, whatever you want to call it, they'll have a bit of a raised platform where the monk sits. Don't go like walking or sitting on that. And in general, don't take a seat higher than the monks, because if you do, then the monks aren't allowed to talk to you, and that'll be seen as disrespectful, and that'll inhibit their willingness, or really how much they're legally in their rule system, how much they're even allowed to talk to you. And then
that's actually a Vinaya rule.
It is a Vinaya rule, yes. And so if you're perceived as being disrespectful in some of these ways, and usually they will point it out if you've made some sort of an offense. It's not like you're just going to be like secret and they're going to keep it. If it's a big thing, usually a lay person's going to, grab you and say, hey, you can't sit there or whatever. But it's usually quite obvious what it is. But if you avoid that, that's better. Another thing is Buddha images. Whenever you go to one of these halls that has a big Buddha image, that's where you've got to be sort of extra composed. Pictures are going to be fine and so forth, but extra.
In that regard, if you're in a ceremony, do exactly as everybody else is doing, you'll be fine. Look at what you're doing and do it, and that'll be okay.
We're losing you, Robert.
Robert, are you there? I think we've lost Rob.
Hey,
No,
Robert.
he's still transmitting. It's just not coming through with any volume. Let's give him
Hey,
just a
Robert.
second.
Make it easier to connect, especially when the person
Okay,
is
he.
in it, make it easier to connect with your
One sec. Let me try to chat him. I think our audio is not getting through to him.
Yep. We are going across wireless between how many hemispheres? At least two.
Let's
Yes,
see.
Zoom is impressive.
Oh, he's.
Can you not hear me?
Can now.
We can hear.
We missed about maybe a minute or 40 seconds.
Okay. I think I'll just summarize it. Basically what I was saying is that although you might have some of these things pointed out to you, if you can follow some of this etiquette from the start, that will make a really good first impression and make it much easier to get involved in the community and any of the different opportunities that opens up. You can follow most of these. It really will impress the monks to a certain extent, or to a bigger extent, just the surrounding Asian community. And other than that, I really don't think there'd really be much of a cultural conflict. Even if you aren't, I think one of the questions someone asked earlier is how much if you aren't participating in some of the other more cultural aspects, how that will affect the relationship. That might affect, some of the opportunities for friendship with the laity, but in terms of the Dhamma practice, really it's not going to have much of an impact at all. I think that you can be welcomed in terms of the Dhamma without joining in, and whether it's the funerals or the potlucks or the long chanting ceremonies or whatever else. If you just follow the basic etiquette of how to behave and interact with the people in that, what portions you choose to participate in, really no one's going to find it strange at all that you aren't participating in those other parts.
One thing, you will find a lot of Thai people who do speak English, but they will converse with you and talk with you in English because that's the only way. But generally, they come to the Thai Wat speak Thai, so that's what they like to do. But they will speak English with you. And the another point that I would like to make is that at every Wat, I missed that comment. At every Wat, the lay people will have their own hierarchy. And part of the hierarchy will have to do with what was the small group of people that got the Wat started, that got it going. And so they will be kind of the ones in charge. Actually, the group who runs the money, that's the ones who will run the temple, and you need to find ways of paying respect to them, like the monks. It will be generally the elder men and women. Women have a lot of power at the Wat. In fact, Thai society is a matriarchal society. I won't go into all the reasons and details for that being true, but it is self-evident. You will find women having a lot of power at the Wat because it's a reflection of Thai culture. And so generally, it will be a wife and her husband that is the primary contributors of a Wat. The wife will be one that will have most of the power, just because the husband will defer to her. So be nice to the old ladies, especially nice to the old ladies, because they're the ones who put that Wat together in the first place.
Awesome.
Is that, Jim, a question?
So I think, yeah, if we could, would now
Is
be a
it
good
time to
time?
go to questions now?
Move
Okay.
to question.
Yeah.
Would that be okay? And we can be fluid as well, but.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've just been stacking them up in the chat for order purposes.
I think that we've covered a lot of the talking about the opportunities and the experience and the etiquette. I think we can move on to questions. Is probably the best use of time right now.
Awesome. So I can, yeah, so CJ had asked about nuns, ordained, women. So I think that would be something to speak on. That would be a good topic as well.
Okay. I actually gave a talk on women in Buddhism that's just on YouTube, or let us say that I'll put it on today now that I know that there's an interest there. However, whatever is going on in Thailand is still in seed form, but that at the Western Wats, you will not have any bhikkhunis unless that Wat has only bhikkhunis. You will never find a Wat in the United States that has both nuns and fully ordained women. That's just how it is. Okay.
You won't find any here in Thailand either.
No, you won't. the Wats for the fully ordained women is a full-on Wat all by itself. I do know of one that's a Wat for women that's in Greenville, South Carolina. And we can see if we can look up the information if that's what you would be looking for. But there, I'm sure, are other monasteries in the United States that are for women. Yes, the bhikkhuni is alive and well.
No.
The ladies have arisen. Well. Pardon?
I wouldn't say that it's well. I'd say that it's coming alive. But okay. That's a big thing with some of the Thai political structures, and because the bhikkhunis never really made it, that ordination tradition didn't make it to Thailand in the first place.
Never had bhikkhunis in Thailand.
So it's kind of a big thing for fully ordained nuns. There are some, but there are they run into a lot of trouble with the high up hierarchy here, because there's a big connection in the high levels of the bureaucratic hierarchy of monks here, and the royal family and the government and the military and everything else. It's all together, and the definite answer to that is we're sticking with the status quo of patriarchy. So there are a few that make it because they're accepted within their local communities in Thailand, but it's very rare. What you do see more commonly is mechi, which they're not fully ordained, but they've taken 8 or 10 precepts, and they live a sort of monastic life. I've met many of them, and most of them are really, really awesome, really, yes. Really awesome women. I'm almost always more impressed by them than I am by the monks, but they're not very common in the States, because there are, this is sort of a ordinance issue, I guess, because the monks can't live in the same building as women. That's against the rules. They'd have to have a separate building for it, which here in Thailand, most of the monasteries have a large amount of space and lots of really small buildings, but that's not economical or practical in the States and these other places. So they tend to have one big building, which sort of precludes any women living there, according to the rules. So unless there's a center that's set up for it specifically, it tends to not work. And they tend to not they don't have the Thai government support in sending such practitioners abroad either. So they just never get sent. They never set up housing, never do anything else. It just doesn't happen. It's just an issue of the status quo that really needs to change, and it is changing, but progress is slow.
There is a website that can be found in Thailand, and the picture of it is maybe somewhere between a half a dozen as a dozen bhikkhunis walking on Vendabat. This is in Ayutthaya, and that temple has been well established. And there's about 400 mechis there, but they have now established the bhikkhuni order there. Yes, flying in the face of the Thai government and all of the power of the ordinary-minded monks, to where underground, there's a lot of monks and a lot of the society that support these women in bringing alive the bhikkhuni order in Thailand.
Yeah, and there are some up here. I've met them there. But in the Asian Wats in America, that is not going to be, you aren't going to find them, because they aren't accepted by the powers that be. And since the powers that be are the ones who get to pick things like visas, you just won't see them.
If there are anyone on this list or online with us right now who are actively contemplating going and joining, give me a call and I'll get you connected with some ways of going.
Awesome. Another one, I think, Jim, we have maybe 7 of Jim's questions. So if anyone wants to unmute and just ask a question or put it in the chat, we can do that. But if not, I'll plug one of Jim's questions.
For a while.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting one. It's kind of getting down to the reality here, which one of the questions was, would the eventual idea be to have retreats? I think this is probably a later downstream thing, but to have a retreat at the facility.
But it may not be as late down the stream as you may think.
And how does that work? Because it seems kind of wild to me because that a monk would be leading it or wouldn't be leading it would be a question as well.
No, one of the guys in this meeting today would be the ones who were leading that retreat. And what we will have to put together is the cooking and all of the logistics for having the retreat going. What the Wat would do would offer the facilities. Now, here's something that Robert hadn't mentioned yet, but the typical temples or Wats in the United States as well as Thailand, there's a lot of sleepovers.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of sleepovers. At Wats and Moke, they've got a dormitory for 500 at a time.
It's incredible.
Okay, so they have sleepovers, and basically it can either be a large room where everybody goes and sacks out. In a retreat, who needs a private room? Who needs a bed and breakfast for a retreat? Basically, all you need is a place to lay down. And so when you think of retreats going in that direction, you've got the bigger problem is the food. But the place and the offering of the space, I expect that every monk would be gladdened with someone coming and saying, we would really like to do a meditation retreat at your facility. If we got as much of it together, would you support us? I know Mahasamsak would start doing that again. He did it at Wat Greensboro when I was there.
Oh, I think that anywhere would. I think practically every temple, even here, the last couple that I've been to, they were basically, after talking to one of the monks for a while, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're serious about this practice thing. They're like, yeah, stay. Like, we've got an extra toothbrush to stay for the next few days. I'm like, whoa, guys, I have other commitments. I can't just drop everything and stay. But usually they're very, very, very open to that. If it's going to be just 1 or 2 people, you can almost do it on the drop of a hat as long as you've been there a couple times and they know you. If it's going to be a larger group, then they're going to need to work out logistics. Probably not for where people stay, because is just, how much determined by square footage of floor space, but more of with food. For a small group, it's very easy to just get accommodated in with the lay people supporting the monks. If it's a larger group, then I imagine that either you could arrange, for a lot of these places, they have a kitchen, so you could perhaps arrange for the kitchen.
Every Wat has a kitchen.
And if not, what you could also do is pass the plate around before the retreat. And if you have set up a good relationship with the ladies in the kitchen, you can get them to cater your thing. That also is very not difficult to do. And a lot of them would be quite happy to do that. They see that as a good deed and they want to do that. The only restriction might be is they may not financially be able to afford feeding a couple dozen people for a week, so you would need to contribute to that.
In this regard, find out who it is, and it'll generally be a woman who is in charge of the kitchen. She's your best friend.
So I think those are some really important points to underline, which is that there are some really established traditions and expectations that might seem sort of crazy to us. Like, why would anyone do that? But we could totally have a Tucker retreat or whomever retreat there. And it's less about the teacher and more about just the activity of a group meditating there.
If Tucker is up for it, we can set him up so that he can do one retreat after another, 3 retreats a month at a different temple throughout the United States. Do that for a living.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Let's see what
I'm gonna have.
Jim, sorry.
Yeah, so I'm gonna probably be hanging out with Tucker next month around the Seattle area. We should probably set up some sort of a meeting with these people. However, I will point out the big, gigantic gorilla in the room, which is that there's no retreats going on right now due to COVID. And I certainly am not going to be taking any of like my highly contagious potato Sangha into the place where all of my like potentially old nobles are, because I need them nobles.
You can't get in right now. The Wats are closed down.
So,
in fact, the Wats are more closed than anything else I know of because they're Thai. And right now, Thailand is absolutely closed down. It is shut.
Beautiful. So, if we want to start this conversation out, and I feel like we probably do, then I think we're going to have to start it out online rather than in person. And in that case, it really comes down to, has anybody got a contact that we can set up a meeting with?
What city? What temple?
What? Yeah.
That's easy. Contact's the easy bit.
You want to throw something on the calendar? I mean, Noah's already rounded up most of the usual suspects here, but I know the Spuds like meet every single Friday, and we could just have somebody hop on and, well, there's a few other questions over there that I'd like to also go through and before like introducing like them to Spuds, because like we have our own like cultural sensitivities, like around secrecy, discussing of attainment, stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's. So just to
that's
rewind
something.
A bit, yep.
That's something that to not be discussed with the monks. Not for a while. I would say only after you know a monk for a couple of years would you begin to bring up that topic. That's a taboo topic, attainment. Don't go there. So I imagine that Spuds has something along that line too.
Well, no, kind of the opposite.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily need to go down the rabbit hole, but the whole pragmatic Dharma would be sort of referring to a few online communities that have purposely begun to discuss attainments in a bit of a movement off of some of the ways that Dharma has appeared more in the West in a Western fashion. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a part of the Vinaya to not discuss attainment. So another legalist thing. Robert, did we miss anything from you a moment ago, or?
No.
Okay.
Jump in for 1 second. I saw on the website that Wat Atam is already using Zoom for some of their meetings.
Yes.
So I think they used to have at least a weekly meditation set. They may be doing it online already, and we may be able to just join it.
Excellent. That's exactly what we want to do, is have that kind of research. So you probably have picked the golden apple just then. That may be the way to get started with it. Okay, Noah, do you have another question? I think that we've got that one pretty well. The question was, do we anticipate running retreats? The answer is all kinds of possibilities are there.
Right. And I think that's really exciting. And just to kind of I'm building the plane, or we're building the plane as we fly it here. So but this is exciting because it's never been done before. Basically, I think this particular merging, even though these institutions have existed in the States for decades, so we would be able to be on the cutting edge of something really major, which is a big part of this. Let's see. Anyone else with questions? If not, I'm going to pick one of Jim's. So we know online options. They have talked to the Watt already about this idea. We can do a retreat there. So in terms of getting some monks in a chat, I think the idea would be for us to join a Zoom, to start, to begin to facilitate. And we're not going to go in talking about spiritual attainments, probably. What about, this is one that comes to mind. What about, and then I'll go to Martin's one, practice. So practice experience, right? So for instance, I attend a Tibetan temple in Seattle, and you don't really go in even and talk about practice. And I think that in Thai Buddhism, that would be not as prohibitive, but could I go in and describe, to a monk, I was meditating and watching my breath this way, and this event occurred in my mind, and blah, blah. What would you recommend if that happens again? Is that sort of an okay discussion topic? I'm assuming it is, but.
After you establish a relationship, I would not expect you to be asking those questions the first week or month or so. But after a while, you get to know someone, you'll know who to ask and that kind of thing too.
Yeah, I think that if you've met them just maybe, I don't know, 3 times or so, just enough that they've seen you a few times and they feel like, okay, you are interested in actually being semi-regular, which in Thailand is a very loose definition, and you could disappear for months and no one will think a thing of it. Then yeah, if you're going to just discuss it in very specific terms without saying, jhana or anything else, if you actually want to discuss the details of what's happening, you can. But as soon as you start talking about attainments, that is taboo and you're not going to get anywhere.
Awesome. That's really helpful. Martin had a question about diet, I think. So just that it would be vegetarian, right? I think that's
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
No.
No. It may be some really weird stuff.
That being said, if there are other vegetarians, I've been a vegetarian for like a decade or so, and I've been a vegetarian throughout all these temple stays. It generally is not too difficult, as long as you're not going to cause a fuss about it. If you're going to alert the kitchen, you can do that, but generally they are going to have a little bit of just don't cause a fuss. So if that means you've got to sometimes pull the piece of chicken out of your salad because you don't want to eat the chicken, then that's how it's going to work. They won't go out super out of their way to cater to you, but they are interested in it. They are interested in making you have a good experience. So I've had times where the kitchen cooked vegetarian things just specifically for me, because they knew that that's how I ate and they wanted to make sure that I was fed well. So if for like a retreat or something, it would be very easy to arrange. For a visit, you're just going to have to sort of pick and choose, of course.
Yeah, that's right. If we were having a retreat, whether it was for a weekend or a few days or even 7 days, we could. We'll probably have to do the arrangement of the cooking, and the kitchen would be available. But one of the ways that we could arrange it is for one of the Thai people to do the cooking. That's possible. And if you do, then you can have whatever that you want. She'll cook authentic cuisine, Thai. It may be weird, but or let us say a first time.
Awesome. Another question that Jim had was, I think, and this will be really relevant because I think one of the beauties of our group of Spuds is that we're pretty eclectic, and that there's a space or a container for a variety of different traditions and practice systems. So, but the question would be, would the discussion of other practice systems be acceptable or harmonious there, I think? Like, meaning discussion of other lineages in Buddhism, for instance.
Given that they're already doing that within among themselves, I see no problem with that at all. I will say that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was quite a fan of Zen. And so that should go a long way. Also, it can be said that the Dalai Lama was a student of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. Well, at least they went for a visit there.
They were friends.
Yeah, they were friends.
Well,
in terms of mixing.
Yeah, you go. I'll clarify my question a little bit.
Add on a little bit to that, because so like you said, they're already doing that. That's not very common here in Thailand. So like I practice a lot in Zen, and so when I went to the temple down the road, you know, I talked about that, and they're quite open to that. And you know, the monk that I was talking to most recently is like, yeah, like I don't know anything about it. Here they're going to be open to talking to it, but they don't know anything about it. In the States, they will have more exposure because the Thai monks are for the most part, are part of what's called the international. It's IBAA. It's like the International.
I was just about to mention that. You beat me to it.
And this is basically a group that it's almost like the friendship community of the inter-Asian traditions. So all the different ones. So when I was in DC, I would go with some of the monks and other things for some of these events. We would be to, you know, Chinese temples, Tibetan temples, Burmese temples, Cambodian temples, Lao temples, all of them. I think it was just about everything except places where there were more white people than 5. It was basically me, 1 or 2 other guys, and then like a ton of Asians at any of these events. But in terms of mixing like the traditions, they might not know a lot of details, but they'll be quite happy to talk about it and open to that. They're already reaching out and have been for quite some time amongst the Asian communities.
Buddhism by its nature is not competitive. The only ones who will compete are the ones who are kind of newbies, who will say, yay, Vajrayana, or yay, Mahayana, or yay, Theravada. No, it's yay, Buddhadhamma. Well, in that case, I'd like everybody to turn their microphone on just long enough to say goodbye.
It's nice chatting with everyone.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Yes, it's good to see faces. Turn the cameras on too. That's really great. Yeah, at one time we had more than 20 people online, but now we've only got, let's see, 3.
Well, we have 15, so
yeah, we're now sitting at 15.
That's pretty good. I mean, not bad fallout for 2 hours.
Bigger than I thought, more than we had planned. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you all so much for participating. These are good questions. I especially like Jim's questions. Eric, you didn't say very much, and you're one of the stars of this show here.
Star?
Yeah, I've been thinking about you. Yes, Eric is in a position to where he could actually move into the Wat in Seattle.
Looking forward to it. At least checking the place out.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. Dhammarato, we're going to have to get you into that one in Chicago pretty soon, too.
That'd be awesome.
Hinsdale.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, Robert, goodbye. Noah, goodbye.
Bye.
Eric and Buddhadasa and Martin and Chris and David and Gibson and Steve and everybody. Thank you so much. Carlos.
Thank you.
PW. All right. Well, Noah, I guess we can go ahead and set something up. Robert and I and you will talk about getting together with doing something. As what Jim was thinking about.
Yeah, I think that'll be great. You know, I've got the recording, so I'll do that. And this has been really good to, you know, because it's such a grand, you know, it's a big idea. So to get into the nitty gritty and do the idea has been really good. So great. We'll be in touch.
Carlo just said he found a big Wat in Los Angeles, and I didn't even remember that one. Yeah, the last time I was in that Wat, there was like 25 monks there. That's a very famous Wat for all of the monks who are in the U.S. They want to go to Los Angeles because there is so much money at that Wat. If a monk does a funeral, they'll get like $200 or $300 for that funeral. So that's a big one in Los Angeles, and I hadn't even thought about it. So anyway, thank you, Carlo, for mentioning that. And we'll see you guys later.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to end the meeting for all now. I'm going to
All
stop
right.
the recording first. Yes.